Hello and welcome back to the lab. Today on the bench, let's talk about something that's necessary to the lab but not near as fun as fixing gear and repairing stuff, and that's storage and organization, because it's gotten out of control and I've been spending quite a bit of time over the last probably 6 months getting the lab organization and things like that in under controls to make the lab more functional. Obviously, let me get more videos up to YouTube, and also just to help me repair gear faster. And we have a piece that's been bugging me for a little while that I think I may have finally solved going forward. Okay, let's talk about parts acquisition, and parts storage. Essentially, anybody who's ordered parts more than a few times knows that there are price breaks for volume discounts. So if I need 2 capacitors for a project and I order 50, I'll usually pay per each less. So initially when I started doing YouTube in the lab, I was buying in lots of 10s, 25s, things like that. So I'd buy some capacitors and I'd just see how long they lasted. And that's how I kind of knew what to buy in bulk and what not to, because the parts I kept running out of, I was obviously burning through a lot more, so I needed to bump up the on-hand inventory. And so for, say, a 100 microfarad capacitor of a reasonable size, the 50 volts just is a nice voltage. I can pop this in anything under 50 volts and it not be a problem. And the physical size isn't too bad. I ordered quite a few of them. This is one box of 3, and we can see how many caps are in there. So I keep a lot of different value capacitors on hand. All of them are in these little bin boxes, and they're labeled. These boxes are from Uline. Here's some part numbers on the boxes. S3542. Don't just run out and order that part number, because the boxes have 3 dimensions that are important. There's a height, which is about 4 inches, is what they typically are. But then what's really important is the width and length. So depending on the parts, you may want something wider, or you may want something longer or shorter. Now what's going to dictate the length is actually going to be the shelving system that these are going on. And the way I set these up is I'll put the shelf about this high off the top of the box. So as long as I don't go over the box, it'll slide in and out of the shelf. I can pull the whole box out, and it's not a problem. And there's 2 ways to do it. One way, you can go shelf depth, and in this case I did, because the shelf that these sit on are 18 inches. Sorry, I live in Imperial land, not metric, but we have an 18-inch box that fits shelf depth. If you go up to a 24-inch wide shelf, there's actually 2 options. One, you can get a half-depth box. You can get 12 inches, and then you can have front and back, or you can get a full-depth box and have, if the shelf goes up to the wall and you can't get to the back side, you can go full depth and a straight 24-inch box. You can also get these bins up to 12 or 24 inches wide, especially for power cables and things like that. Having some boxes that are 24 inches wide is very nice. Actually, let me go grab one. Here is a 12 by 24 box just full of a bunch of 10-foot data cables, and helping me not keep cables spidering all over the place, which is always a challenge. So this is a full depth because the shelf is up against the wall in the back. So this sits up on the top shelf, and if I need a data cable, grab it out of here. Can pull the whole box off if I need it for a project. So highly useful and very customizable for the individual items that you're storing. Now, for ordering parts, there's a couple ways to order things. You can get cut tape, you can get full wheels, or you can get custom wound wheels. The custom wound wheels are usually about an additional $7-ish, I think, to have them wound up on a reel. If you're ordering enough parts, there's a situation where that can make sense. Because sometimes, like for 0-ohm jumpers, the last time I ordered, a full wheel was like 5,000 parts or something like that, and I didn't need nearly that many. That was beyond a lifetime supply of 1206 0-ohm jumpers. But so it made sense to order a smaller value, get them put on a wheel, because I have a shelving unit, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that handles these very well. For cut tape, I actually found these very, very recently. I'm still actually migrating everything to these storage. These are from the Robbins company, and they ship out of Germany. And they're little cartridges that store a cut wheel of parts. Now, one of the things that I liked about these, a variant of these is available on Thingiverse if you have a 3D printer. However, one of the reasons why I went with this specific one is they have a spring-loaded latch that is much better when the side panel's on. If I pop this side panel on because it has tracks on both sides, it migrates up and down like it's supposed to. But that spring-loaded latch, I believe the way this is supposed to work is the sealing tape is supposed to come out the top and the parts come out the front when you're doing assembly. But the expandable mouth on the front of this allows me to put active components, passive components, various different sizes of components in an individual cartridge. These are 13 by 11 size parts, and they're sitting in the same cartridge that 0402 parts are sitting into. So very nice, especially when I get into some active components, transistors, and especially some of these bigger capacitors. Having the adaptable opening is was one of the reasons why I went with this solution. They're not terribly expensive for what they are, but I'm still figuring these out and getting these in my storage, but this is what I'm actually using for now. The one thing that I'm worried about with these, having seen them mess with them and played with them, is this hinge looks very, very thin. I want to make... I'm not sure how well that's going to hold up over time, because we have this hinge right here. But other than that, nice, solid, love the spring, and a nice unit. To store these, I could use a bin box, or I have an old shelving unit that used to be designed for CD media that I'm not keeping that much CD media around anymore. But we have a label on the top of what everything is, and we'll sort them into parts. So we have transistors, capacitors, and some resistors. But then to not separate the tape from its part number, which can be kind of important, the part number is labeled down here on the side of the cartridge. The other nice thing about these cartridges is you can get a base. This base holds 8 cartridges. So if I'm doing assembly, I can snap these in, and now they have a base where I can pull them out, operate it, and pull parts out and move things around in the lab, and it's completely customizable. This base is 3D printed, and I believe it's full of sand, so it's actually got some weight to it and everything, but I'm at the moment, like I said, I'm just switching the organization over to these cartridges, but I've been extremely happy with the cartridges, love the labeling, and time will tell whether it's a good idea or not, but as of right now, I think it's a good idea, so that's what we're rolling with. One other crucial thing to note about these Robbins cartridges is these are not ESD-safe plastic. So if you need an ESD-safe container, these are not the pick to go with. My resistors and capacitors aren't going to care. Some of my active components, they might, depending on how sensitive they are. But I'll just have to be careful what I put in these. But for resistors and capacitors, it's not going to be a big deal. But so, not ESD-safe. Plan accordingly. For my surface mount parts, I have a lot of different sizes of surface mount parts depending on projects and things like that, and I always ordered a little bit more than I needed, so having a quick way to see what I have will tell me if I need to order something for something else, another project, or what I have to work with here in the lab. And that's really what the organization is trying to prevent, is misorders and duplicate orders and things like that. And really, if I already have the parts on hand, I don't need to order anything, but I need to be able to see if I have the parts on hand readily and rapidly. So that is what we are trying to achieve with some of this organization and parts. This is also backed up by an Excel spreadsheet, which is a quick These are part numbers I've used in the past and have on hand, so go look. If it's not in that Excel spreadsheet, I've never ordered it, and so I might need to buy it. If it is in that Excel spreadsheet, I need to see how many I have, and it might be time to go take a look and see what we have on hand. For through-hole resistors, because I have a vast array of through-hole resistors, standard bin boxes split in two. They're sized, wattage, and tolerance on these, and we have 1/4 watt in the front, 1/2 watt in the back, and as I need to expand out, if I needed 1 watt and 2 watt, they'd be over here, 3 and 4, things like that, and it would keep expanding. In the racks, which I'll take a picture of in a little bit, they're sorted by size, then wattage, then tolerance. So 470 ohm, 1/2 watt, 1% would be over here. 470 ohm, 2 watt, 5% would be over here. So it lets me really quickly figure out where I need to go for storage and get things sorted that way. Capacitors are sorted the same way. It's value, voltage, type. Most of the caps I have in stock are electrolytic, but they're sorted by value, and then they're sorted by voltage. So I'll have 10 microfarads on the shelf, and then it'll be 10 microfarads, 10 volts, 50 volts, 100 volts, 200 volts. And I can quickly look down and go, okay, that's the cap I need. Do I have any left? And go from there. Wheels are going to be sorted the same way once I have enough. I don't have a ton of parts wheels yet, but they're growing, because as I run parts out of here, obviously I've used a bunch of them if they haven't been sticking around for a while. So I'll order a wheel because I'm going through them enough, and that way I don't have to keep paying shipping every other day. Okay, here's a couple photos of some of the deeper places in the lab that don't get on camera much, but that's a space problem, and the fact that the camera is tied to the bench for the microphone. The microphone's a wireless body pack, but the receiver is actually bolted to the bench, so it's really hard to get the camera away from the workbench and still have good audio, so that's why we're doing it this way. So we have the capacitor section here. As we can see, value, voltage, type, and then radial or snap, and then sometimes, like for this one right here, if I have ultra low ESR, I'll call it out on the front panel. Part numbers are on the sides of the boxes down the side, so if I ever need to pull a data sheet, I know exactly which part number I ordered. Also helps with reordering when they run out. What do I need to put back in to get the supply back up so we can continue making videos? Resistor-wise, these are Arco mill containers, and they have a PCB divider in them. So we start up here at 1 ohms. These two boxes are if I get low resistance, so I don't have to roll all of them back up. Let's say I need to add something in here. I can pull these two out and not have to rearrange the entire box inventory. But 1 ohms, 2.7 ohms, 1/4 watt, 1/2 watt, and it just counts up and down. So if I know I'm looking for, say, 330 ohms, I can start here, 270 to 470. 330's right there. So it really helps find the resistors that I need quickly when I'm doing a repair or a restoration. So I'm not digging through parts boxes, because I had a whole bunch of bags and boxes, and I'd have 4 boxes I have to dig through. It was taking me half an hour to find a specific part that I knew I had. So getting everything laid out like this is really for speed, to help me out in repairing, and also inventory management of making sure I don't duplicate order. I don't need 12 different bags of the same part if I already have them. Okay, here's the Metro shelving that's holding the parts wheels, and I have these split out. As of right now, I don't have a lot of wheels, but we have resistors, capacitors, and active components. And each one of these shelves is actually a front and a back. So I'm only filling up the fronts as of right now, but as I get more wheels, these will expand out this way. And it'll have to grow as my storage needs continue to grow. So Metro wire shelving is the only people I know of that make this bent style rack for the component wheels. So they are a little bit on the expensive side, but with that comes some features that I was actually looking for and needed. So we have these, which are the press fit units that go underneath the shelves themselves. So they're the height adjusters. They clamp onto the pole, and the shelf forces the cone together. And this ridge right here, this ridge right here grabs onto the notch in the pole and keeps the shelf from falling down. And they're self-tightening. The more weight you put on the shelf, the harder they grab the pole. The thing is because this is storing active components as well as passives, I did want to manage ESD a little bit better than just throwing them all on a plastic shelf or metal shelf or something like that. So we have these gray sleeves that are hiding underneath these couplers, and these are conductive. They're conductive to the pole, so the shelf will dissipate static to the pole. The pole will dissipate static. However, because it's on casters, it won't ground out, except the casters are special conductive casters that actually continue the ground path through the bearing of the caster and down into the ground itself. So they have a conductive layer to the rubber. They have a conductive bearing and a way to get through the bearing. And so I have ground all the way up here bleeding into ground of the floor. The other way you can do this is with a drag chain. You just clip a small portion of chain off the bottom of the rack, have it drag the ground. It'll ground out the whole rack, but you still need the conductive shelf sleeves to allow the path down the pole onto the ground and finally into the ground to protect the active components from ESD. Okay, well, here's one of those sleeves that I pulled off my shelf, and they're supposed to be conductive. So let's see if they are conductive or if I bought a very expensive piece of plastic. Actually, not horribly expensive. For if they are conductive, these weren't too bad for cost. Okay, straight to the meter. Put that over there. Well, that's conductive. So depending on how I hit it, about a K ohm, 1 K ohm. That's not bad. And that's actually pretty far apart. So I'm probing here and here. And that's a K ohm. So these are quite conductive. It's a low ohms resistor. So yeah, no. Conduction from the shelf to ground. Okay, labeling and label printers. So all the labels that you've seen have come out of this Brother P950 NW. Pushing the top, it takes the P-Touch label cartridges, and this is my 6mm. Here's the 12mm that you can actually see the tape width, 6 and 12, that come out of this unit. Now, this is not one of the Brother P-Touch labelers that run on batteries and have the keyboard on the front of them. I had one, it worked well, but I needed some more use case, one of which I needed the ability to save the labels for future use. So I'd set up a label, print a bunch of them, then when I'd want to come back, I couldn't remember what I used, all this other stuff, and I also wanted some more font choices for different labeling needs. And on some of the battery-operated units, I was very, very, very limited in terms of font choice and things like that. This particular unit is actually a network printer. It does need a computer, but it hangs off the RJ45 network here in the lab. And I get the entire font library of a computer. I'm not limited to what's built into the chips on board. I can also save labels, things like that. The P-Touch software's a little finicky. The printer is great. I have some arguments with the software, but it does function. The other thing that I really, really like about the P950 network is it can take up to a 1.5-inch tape or 36mm if you're not in my corner of the world. So with this larger tape, this is what I do the capacitor boxes with. This is what I do. Actually, I've done a fair bit with this 1.5 inch tapes. So I burn up, I mean, the primary tapes I use and I burn up a lot in the lab is 1.5 inch, 12 millimeter, and 6 millimeter, or 0.47 or 0.23. And I also think I use some 3 millimeter quite a bit, a little bit thinner. This is the printer that did the label on that DLP 5150 3000 day video. So where I cleaned it a little too hard and the paint came off, that's the printer that came to the rescue and let me put the range label back. Thanks for stopping by the lab and taking a look at the storage video for non-technical lab drudgery that everybody has to deal with. And I hope it helped. The storage is an ongoing and evolving solution that kind of never stops. And as needs change and things evolve, things are going to change here in the lab, I'm sure. This is just what I've put together for my specific needs. I'm not saying anybody has to do this in there, and this is good for every lab or anything like that, but I didn't even know about these cartridges till about a week ago. So hopefully if somebody finds that information useful, then we're good to go. If you like the content, hit all the YouTube buttons, like, subscribe, and the bell. And if you'd like a little bit more, take a look at the Patreon page. Patrons help keep the lights on here in the lab and videos coming to YouTube. And they're running ahead on video releases. So as soon as we get one edited, it goes up on Patreon, but then drops into the release for YouTube. So if you'd like a little bit more, check it out over there. Thanks again for everybody who supports the channel. As always, more's on the way, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.